Today we're going to start talking about marriage, and we'll talk about marriage this week, and next week talk a little bit about divorce and dealing with divorce and remarriage related issues. I think that this is probably my favorite part of this class, just because I'm a big fan of the idea that having good marriages and helping people have good marriages is probably one of the best things we can do in our culture across the board. I think that because I think marriage is a foundation of parenting. It's the foundation of whether or not kids grow up basically okay or basically not okay. I think that it's having a good, healthy marriage is the foundation of stability in our culture, in our society, and in our churches, in our communities. And I think that for people like you that are taking this class, it's one of those things that's just one of the top 2 or 3 significant things that we deal with. Now, let me say, of course, before we start, that I understand that everyone doesn't get married, and a focus on this is not any kind of negative or disparaging kind of sentiment toward people who remain single or people who have been married and now are single. But even if you're a single person, you probably I think probably would agree with me that one of the foundational ideas of our culture is people being married. And I believe some people are called to be single, and they're supposed to be single, and I think that's just fine. It's more than fine. I think it's probably what they're supposed to be doing. And so setting that aside, though, the truth is most of us end up getting married. Most of us want to be married at some point, and it's just a terribly, terribly significant thing for us to deal with. So we're going to spend some time, first of all, thinking about what marriage should be, what a good marriage looks like, and then we'll talk about some of the problems specifically in being married and dealing with people who are married. So we're going to start by looking at some information that comes to us from Judith Wallerstein and Sandra Blakesley. If you've read anything so far and you're familiar with them a little bit, this is this book. It's called, let me see if I can put it in front of the camera, The Good Marriage. That's weird. There it is. It's called The Good Marriage, How and Why Love Lasts. And it's based on a study that they did where they collected a pretty small group of people. I would have to look and see, but it seems like they had 40 to 50 people, couples in their sample. Maybe a few more than that. There may have been 60 or so. People who they identified as having good marriages and people who self-identified as having good marriages. And they spent a lot of time interviewing them and kind of just doing a kind of a qualitative look at what makes a good marriage. This is not the perfect answer to that, but it's a decent answer. So we're going to talk through it a little bit. So the first thing they said was that when they looked at these people who said that they had good marriages, they found that there were 4 basic types of marriages that they saw. One of the things that's really important for us to think about, and you already know this is true, of course, is that all marriages are different. One way of being married doesn't fit everybody. That's one of the big problems that I have with the very fundamental, that biblical manhood, biblical womanhood view, that very fundamentalist idea that if you don't do marriage this way, then you're wrong, or you're not Christian, or you're not biblical, or something like that. Marriages are different. If you just think about the variety of personalities that we have, and then you think about how you would have to increase that variety almost exponentially when you think about bringing people together with different personalities, and then what kind of combinations you can get by bringing those people together in a couple. It's in my mind, it's a little bit stupid to think all marriages have to be the same. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think there are some principles that work in most marriages, but I think there are very few, there are some, but very few hard and fast rules about how marriage should be. And so we're going to talk about some of those differences. So Wallerstein and Blakely said there are 4 basic types of marriages that they found. The first one they called the romantic marriage. This was a marriage that seemed to, now let me back up again really quickly. These are marriages that are, they would say, are kind of characterized by these ideas. These are not the only things that exist in this marriage. For example, the romantic marriage is not 100% romance, 24/7 year-round. But it's kind of a theme. It's kind of the thing that seems to kind of typify or signify their marriage. Certainly, people who are in a romantic relationship also do lots of other things and have lots of other qualities. So these are kind of the things that seem to kind of characterize the marriage. So the first one is a romantic marriage. This relationship is one that's at its foundation seems to be built on passion. Sexual relationship is a pretty significant part. Sensual activities, and that doesn't always just mean sex, of course. That means people who love to sit on the beach and watch the sun go down, or walk through the woods holding hands, or listen to music together, and that kind of sensual experience. Maybe eat really good food together, and that's a really exciting part of their life. All kinds of things like that. People whose relationship is kind of built around the idea of being passionate about each other, not just being partners, not just working on problems together, but that romance and passion and sensual things kind of typify who they are. The second basic type of marriage they said they found were marriages that were rescue marriages. Now, to me, initially, that always sounds like a negative thing. That always sounds a little bit like, here's this person over here with this problem. They're not a whole, happy, healthy person, and another person swoops in and rescues them, and that's kind of a setup for pathology. Maybe, but it's also very possible that there are marriages that are kind of built around that idea that turn out to be really healthy and really solid and really good. Sometimes these are people who have both experienced some kind of trauma in the past, both experienced a really bad marriage in the past, both experienced maybe even loss of their spouse in the past. And those two people, in this incredible kind of moment of grace, they come together and they find something that really heals them and really helps them. Not in a superficial kind of, you complete me kind of a way, but in a way that says I'm hurt and I've been broken, and this relationship is exactly what God has in store for me in order for me to heal and to be happy and to be good. And I think that's a possibility. It may be a little dangerous sometimes, but it it certainly happens. I had a cousin quite a few years ago who died of cancer. Her husband, while she was in the hospital for a long, long period of time, her husband befriended a woman whose husband was also being treated for cancer and dying of cancer. And after both of the cancer patients had died, my cousin's husband and this other woman over time kept in contact with each other, developed a relationship, and eventually got married. And they've been married now for a long, long time. That's a little bit unusual, but that's to me kind of an example of this notion of a marriage that really is a healing, comforting, kind of saving kind of relationship. And I think it's very possible that sometimes that happens with people. We'll stop here and we'll come right back.